Hey guys, it's Ross with Rebellion Forge. You probably heard Jacob talk about getting his 240 over to the shop, so we're going to be hijacking his YouTube channel here for at least an episode or two while we go through and do some reinforcing, install a roll bar on the car. So I'll go over a little bit about what we're going to do. We started doing a little bit of work over the weekend. Jacob did this suspension, these suspension plates a while back in a previous video. The cage mounts are going to sit up here, so we got some plates cut and cleaned up, and some reinforcement that we're going to be adding and getting those welded in. He also wants to add some beefier seat mounts, so as you can see, we started getting the floor cut out versus what's in the factory. We still have these two back mounts that we have to pull out, and then we'll be putting reinforcements on the tunnel and on the rocker on this side, and then running tubes across there. Jacob was able to kind of go back and find some really cool documentation of old ISMA race cars from the late 70s and early 80s, and how they reinforce these cars for racing. So you know, rear mount for the cage will go here and run up, and then attach down here, and there will be a harness bar that runs through. He also has his Sparco seat that he's going to be running, so that we can kind of make sure that everything meshes together. We also pulled off the front fenders because there's some reinforcement that we have to do up underneath. Essentially, you can see where I have it somewhat marked right here. There's a bar that runs from the rear radius rod on the suspension back to the rocker panel on this side. So we'll plate this, plate that, and it'll tie the rocker panel to this subframe area. Then up here in the engine bay, there are some pieces where we'll reinforce the tower here. And you can kind of see the marking down here in the corner where we'll be running a bar. Have to notch out the fender well a little bit and clean that up, but it'll run through on this side and then on this side. Jacob already has some bolt-in pieces, but another bar that they would do is then kind of triangulate the engine bay, run it up here, and then another one over here. But he already has a piece for that, similar in the back of the car for that. The other thing that we'll be doing that Jacob has, he has some prefabricated frame rail pieces that run down underneath the car and essentially attach the front of the car to the back of the car and get all stitch welded. So we're going to be doing all that while this is up in the air. Jacob did a pretty decent job of getting the arms fabricated and everything, but he asked me to look over some of the welds as far as his transmission mounts to the chassis and everything. So we'll do a little cleanup on that, but figured I'd give you guys a quick rundown of the 2J-Z that we're going to be working on for Jacob, and what we're going to be doing. We'll have some more video of the progress as we go. Thanks. Trying to get all the prep work done on the chassis before we get carried away with welding. Earlier this evening, we got the plates down here cleaned up. I got the driver's side all cut out. We have to do a little cleanup, and Kyle's over there getting the rest of the passenger side cut out that we started on this evening. Once we do that, we're going to get these strut towers cleaned up a little bit from where Jacob welded, get the reinforcement done there, and we'll pretty much have the top side reinforcement done, aside from the cage mounts and where we're going to put that. And that's something that we'll probably work on this weekend I need to get my laptop over here. We need to get some dimensions made. We use Bentech software, and then along with Bentech, we have this Pro 105 HT pipe bender that we use that has the swag off-road air over hydraulic assembly, and so we'll just be bending your fairly typical 4-point weld-in roll bar using 1 3/4 095 wall DOM tubing. So, you know, it'll be a really good street safe roll bar with a harness bar in it. That way he can at least run some harnesses on there safely, and that way if he takes it to the track, he's all secured. So we're going to be making custom seat mounts. If you haven't noticed, Jacob's kind of a tall guy. The bolsters on those seats are pretty thick, so cutting out the factory mounts does one of two things. As you can see, that front mount sits about 4 inches up off of the floor, which chews up a lot of seat space. So what we're going to do is we're going to probably lower the seat mounts down roughly 3 inches, at least in the front. And those seat mounts not only will reinforce the floor, but they'll have some captive nuts up on the inside of the tubes. That way he can directly bolt his sliders right to those, and then the seat sits on it, and it'll give him a little bit more headroom. Figure we do a quick summary of what we got done this evening. It doesn't look like a lot, but we're just working on prepping and kind of started diving into some of the fabrication stuff. Over the last 2 days, we were cutting the floor mounts out, and as you can see, Kyle was in here. A bunch of it was just spot welded in, so we even ground out the spot welds, cut everything out so it's nice and smooth. And now Kyle's making these floor mounts, which we'll re-weld in here. And like I said in the previous video, Jacob's a tall guy, so we're trying to accomplish a few things here. He has aftermarket seats with sliders that weren't set up for the mounts that were in here, and two, we're going to try to get the seat as low to the floor as possible so that he has as much headroom clearance. So once we get these in here, we're going to drill some holes in the bottom side and weld some nuts to the inside after we locate the sliders, some captive nuts, and then that way he can just bolt directly down to this. Then these will sit in here, there will be one in the rear, and then these will all get welded to the floor up into the tunnels, and it'll add also another level of reinforcement to this area of the vehicle. Now, the other thing that we were working on tonight in the back is the strut towers, getting them ready for the cage. Spent a little time cleaning up the welds around the strut tower, filling them in. They're not perfect, but this area is real difficult to weld in just in general. You have super thin sheet metal down here, maybe 18 or 20 gauge. There's 2 layers of it. In between that, there's glue, which is just a pain in the butt because at any time it'll pop. Jacob put these new top mounts in, which look to be like somewhere between 3/8 and a 1/2 inch. Then you got some 14 gauge, no, this is a 11 gauge here. So you know, a lot of times the rule of thumb is you set your heat to the thinnest temperature. Well, in this case you can't really do that because you're not going to get any penetration. So it requires you to run the welder a little bit hotter than you normally would, but keep it in close proximity to the thin stuff, but the majority of the heat on the thick stuff. So we got this cleaned up, we got these plates in, we got them welded around. There's reinforcement underneath on the inside, so as far as pressure going down on that. Now that we have all that welded up, we got to go to the front. We have the plates cut out for that. We got to get them welded to the strut towers and to the bottom. So what you'll probably see next is Kyle finishing up the floor mounts. I'll be working on the front, getting that stuff done, and then once we have the inside done, we'll put the cage together, then get the car in the air, work on the subframe connectors, and then the 2 brace points to the front radius rod suspension. So that's kind of a quick roundup of what we got done tonight. See ya.